The meeting to order. Can we have roll call, please?
Trustee Birchie? Trustee Covington? Trustee Harrod? Trustee Hill?
Here.
Trustee Montez? Vice President Sierra? President Johnson?
Here. We're going to have a moment of silence. Please stand, please. Okay, I need a motion for the approval of the minutes. July 24th.
Move to approve.
I'll second.
Question? Roll call?
Trustee Birchie? Oh, we lost one. Trustee Covington?
Here.
Trustee Harrod? Yeah.
Aye.
Trustee Harrod? Trustee Harrod? Okay, thank you. Trustee Hill?
Abstain. I was absent.
Trustee Montez?
Aye.
Vice President Sierra?
Abstain.
President Johnson?
Aye. Motion carries.
And Trustee Birchie on the
Birchie?
minutes, please? Yes, thank you so much. Okay.
Aye. Motion carried.
Good evening, everybody. At your spaces tonight, you have little cards. These are provided to you. We have these, we're going to put these in all of our facilities. We're going to have posters, but these are a simple handout that you can use if you are talking with constituents. We're trying to encourage everybody in the community to complete our every third year, so whatever that is, annual community survey. It does help us to allocate resources and to refine some of our marketing and communication strategies. So we appreciate your help in trying to get this information out. We will start tomorrow across all of our social media and other paid media efforts, but we wanted to, since tonight we had you all here as a captive audience, share these cards with you and let everybody know that community survey will go live tomorrow and will be open for contributions until the end of September. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Yes. Does it count, like, can one person keep entering it over and over again, or will it pick up on their IP address or their email?
We did set it up so that you can fill out more than one survey at a computer, so that, like, if you do it at the library, it would match. But if we are offering the opportunities for people to win, to be in a drawing for a gift card, so that information will allow us to filter out people if they apply multiple times. Yeah. Yes, we are doing a groundbreaking. It's called Tee Off to Transformation to celebrate the kickoff of construction, finally, of the Golf Learning Center. That work actually has started. They're putting up construction fence and they are doing some site work now, but the actual machines and all the fun won't start until not 2 weeks from now. So we hope to have everybody join us on Tuesday, August 27th at 10 a.m. at the Golf Learning Center. And we'll be able to share all the elements of the project again with the community, talk about how to use the Golf Learning Center during construction, and just really celebrate the fact that here we go. The next thing that should be on your calendars is Saturday, September 7th. That day is our Founders Day celebration that we've talked about in this horseshoe before. It's an opportunity for us to celebrate our 130th birthday. In addition to that, we're going to kick off the day at 1:30 with a ribbon cutting and a grand opening of our fully inclusive Glen Oak Playground. So it is pretty fabulous, and we hope that everybody comes to celebrate with us the opening of that new facility. Sure. So as part of our conversations at our last meeting, I did let everybody know that we have had a conversation with the state. We met with representatives of both the House and Senate budgeting unit. There are, at this point, we are on track with a couple of the grants. The one that ties to the Lakeview Loop is allocated. However, we have some questions about that given some other strategic initiatives that we're evaluating as a park district. So we are working with our local legislator to determine the viability of that. One of the allocations that was made to the park district was made in error. It was a reallocated road project, and it's pretty hard to argue that we should just stop midstream replacing a road for some of our dreams. And so we said, okay, you can have the money back, like we had a choice, right? So in that conversation, we were made aware of additional potential funding that is part of a mini capital bill that could be available in this fiscal year as part of a supplementary budget conversation. And so we are working with local legislators. It will take potentially more than one legislator to support the allocation of those dollars necessary for us to be able to move forward with the projects that we've presented to the public in the past. And so we put together a document outlining the things that we've been able to do in good faith to continue that project without state funding, and the gap in state funding that exists with inflation, and our desire to continue to see those goals and dreams for transformational projects come to fruition. That is in the hands of legislators, and we are waiting to hear back. As I get some feedback, our next conversation when we meet in 2 weeks, we'll have some conversations about legislative advocacy on the part of trustees, but I wanted that first review to happen so that I would have some feedback for all of you before I handed you a document cold and then people weren't sure what you were talking about. So we're getting there.
And I know us on the board, we're all informed as to the impacted projects, but can you talk about the projects that are impacted due to the pending funding?
At this point, the only project that we have talked about that should have been funded with state dollars that we know is fully funded is the Golf Learning Center project. There is an additional $1 million that was awarded in the FY25 budget that will help us get to the finish line of that project. And so we are working through the necessary steps to have those dollars officially allocated, but they're available somewhere out there in the state funds in a bucket. So we're waiting to figure out how that connection is. That comes as well from our legislator's office. Those dollars were the only dollar. There is another $3 million that is in the FY25 budget that was allocated to us. We're not under contract, nor have we started with anything. That is money that it was legislator represented that should go to the Lakeview Loop roller skating project. Our concern is that we really want to see those Glen Oak and Proctor projects moved first. So we're trying to work through a process to see what our options are and if we can get additional dollars to make us whole, because that $4 million that sits out there, that original ask is not allocated in the FY25 budget. So if we can find a funding source for that, then that is our priority to try to get those projects moving. We do know, as part of the conversations that we had with all of you, that there are elements of that Glen Oak Park reimagination that still sit out there that are potentially doable within our bond issue budget. So if we were to think about the basketball courts, for example, we could probably find dollars within our annual allocation to do that. It is unlikely that we would be able to find the sufficient dollars necessary to do the reimagination of the amphitheater without support from the state. So at this point, again, my answer, which I'm tired of saying to you and you're tired of hearing, is we need to hurry up and wait just a little bit longer until we get some initial feedback and some direction on how we should most effectively advocate with local legislators to try to access some of those dollars that are part of the mini capital bill.
And I know that's a repetitive question. It was important for me to ask it because I know, especially within the last 2 weeks, I've been proposed questions about where are we with these projects that we've announced.
Hopefully it gets a little clearer every time we do this back and forth and it makes more sense to people, because it is starting to clarify, but it feels like every time we answer one question, we get another one added to the end of the pile. But we're certainly working this process as quickly and as just diligently as we possibly can.
Absolutely. Okay, pivoting and last question. So yesterday I went to the city council meeting, and at the city council meeting, they talked about, or they proposed, their legal counsel proposed a first read of an encampment policy. During the course of that conversation, their legal counsel had specifically made mention that they have been in conversations with Park District staff about how a policy to, for lack of better terms, and my interpretation is ban encampments, could impact our public spaces at the Park District. So can you just bring us up to speed as to what our participation in those conversations have looked like, and what are our next steps, and how, what is our plan to have an active role to make sure that we aren't discouraging utilization of public spaces and encouraging safe havens as well?
So we were originally contacted by the city and asked to convene a group to speak with their legal counsel related to camping within the district. We were able to have myself, Matt Freeman, Christy Shoemaker, anybody else? Who? Oh yeah, Kevin Day. Sorry. Kevin Day was with us too. We participated in a Zoom call with legal counsel from the city. The conversation centered around a series of questions.
I'm sorry, Emily. Is
What?
the air conditioning on? Me, or is it warm in here too? It's you. Oh, okay. I was just wondering. I just thought, does anybody else feel uncomfortable? Just wanted to know if it.
Okay, so legal counsel from the city met with us and with our legal counsel, and our conversation centered around what our ordinances were as a park district tied to camping. They were specifically interested in understanding how we administered and supported overnight camping at facilities like Camp Wakanda. It was primarily making sure that if they were to put together some sort of an ordinance about camping on public property, that it wouldn't somehow make it illegal to camp in our facilities where we authorize it and support it. So that was our primary focus. We did talk, as part of that conversation, we did talk about the fact that we do have ordinance language that says that you shouldn't be in public spaces outside of that dawn to dusk without some prior approval or for some sort of an event or engagement. That was really the extent of our conversation. We did talk about frequency of, our experience with that and how that has been increasing. We talked a little bit about some people staying overnight in parks and building encampments in some of our woods and things like that. But our top priority was to really focus in on what services we provide. And their focus was on trying to make sure that nothing that they established would make anything that we would do a violation of that ordinance. I will tell you, we didn't see a draft of any document. There hasn't been any follow-up conversation. It was really limited to understanding the scope of our services around camping in the park district.
Absolutely. And I know this really falls outside of the jurisdiction and scope of the park district in terms of the regulation component of it, but the enforcement and policing of this policy would definitely impact our jurisdiction. And I think Mayor Ali, along with Councilmember Gordon Young, Councilman Allen, and a few other folks, did such a good job of hitting on strong points as to how a policy like this can actually be harmful rather than helpful. So it's good to know that we haven't, as a collective, we haven't reviewed a policy, but the current draft does include some language that would fine unhoused individuals, that would potentially lead to incarceration of these unhoused individuals as well, all of which are very alarming. So I don't know where the best place is for us to make sure that that stays on our radar, but I do want us to make sure that we track that policy and then have a more intentional conversation as to what are the impacts on Park District land.
Absolutely. And we try to monitor city council agendas and track, that sort of thing. Sometimes we don't always catch everything before it happens. And I haven't read the language, and so I probably should just stop talking until I have, because there are parallels in some of our ordinances that do try to dissuade people from sleeping in our parks, because that's not safe for them or for others. And so I would like to have further conversation about this with you after I've had a chance to review their proposed ordinance.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks,
Thank you.
President Johnson.
Well, thank you. And also, the Peoria Park District has a different narrative also than city council does. And we're definitely not going to be doing any incarceration of anyone found sleeping in our parks. That's not going to happen unless they're doing something to cause a problem or harm someone. But just sleeping in the park, we won't be entertaining incarceration,
So just to be clear, the compliance and regulation portion of this, as the ordinance is currently drafted, would first start off with a warning to individuals, then will be followed with a fine, and then the consequences will then progress. I find some irony, and I think a lot of the chamber yesterday found the irony in that reinforcement of the ordinance, because if folks are already unhoused, how do you expect them to pay fines? But that's just another level of conversation that we won't get into now, but
Okay.
I hope that we don't do that.
No, we won't. Thank you. Anything else, Emily? Trustee Montez?
Yes, the amount that the state was asking back for the road funding, how much was that?
So there was an allocation that, admittedly, when we saw it in the state budget, it was weird. It was $6 million that it showed that it was reallocated from the county of Peoria, sorry, county administrator and county board, to the park district. And in fact, we were informed that by the budget unit that was done in error. So it was really never ours to begin with.
Thank you.
Just a follow-up question about the homeless circumstance. So if we do identify somebody who's needs to not be overnight, what's the procedure? I mean, I just learned today that the city has a pilot program for working with individuals so that they can get the services and the, sort of get them equipped to find housing and that sort of thing. So what do we do?
So first of all, I will tell you that I represent the Park District on the Home for All Homeless Continuum of Care Steering Committee, so that I am able to try to stay connected with local process and make sure that we are plugged into the service provider network that is available for homeless persons. It is part of our ordinance that when we find that sort of an encampment in a park, especially in a place where you might cause a fire or other damage, we work with Matt's Parks crews and with Chief Green to reach out to that person and ask them to leave the park, that the park is not a place to stay, to sleep. We have engaged with social service agencies. Phoenix has that street team. In certain situations, we are able to engage them to talk to folks and try to help them find places to live. A lot of folks don't want to live, as you know, right? They don't want to live in those emergency shelters or those kinds of supports. And so we do our best to give them time to move their things and move on. If after a certain amount of time their stuff is still hanging in trees and a mess, we do take it and we do dispose of it. But we are trying to be as kind as possible and honor the situation that they're in, and also recognize that it is potentially not safe for them or for their things for that to be kept in a public park. So we try to find that balance. We work with social service as much as possible. Chief Green and his team do a really great job of interacting with folks and trying to make that as non-confrontational as possible, but it is really, really difficult.
Any other questions of Emily? Emily, thank you. Becky? Becky's in the house.
Our monthly report is before you. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to try and answer them. There's a lot of projects under construction, a lot going on. Right now, they're working on the Glen Oak Lagoon Path, so that's a good one, making progress.
Just one quick question. What's the timeline for the train, the Glen Oak train?
So it's supposed to be delivered this fall, and right now we're working on storage containment and ultimately the solar panels that will also help power it. So
Yeah, I'd like.
and my question would be, is it things that are out for bid that are behind schedule by the contractor, like awarded? Like how would you interpretation? Okay. I'm just curious if you had a specific. Okay, thanks.
I do have a question. Emily, you and I spoke about us going to evaluate the goalpost at Logan Center. I know that wouldn't be on this list of items, but I mean, have you had an opportunity to make any headway on that? So just to be clear for everyone's context. And then Matt, before you go, just to be clear for everyone's context, so Peoria Southside Soccer Club, on a weekly basis, they have anywhere from 300 to 500 individuals at Logan every Sunday, and they had made a request for us to consider doing some alterations to the goalposts in order for that field to, I guess, accommodate whatever soccer regulations or soccer standards that are traditional to a competitive sport. So I had made that request of Emily to look at those goalposts and see what we could potentially do.
So I can confirm that we did I think it was last fall, we moved the goalpost. I believe it was 10 yards. And then they asked that we move it back a little ways. So it's still not regulation. Unfortunately, the park is pretty well landlocked how we configure that soccer field. We're open to any configuration that we can make work within the footprint that we've got. But I do think we're utilizing the space the best that we can. So I don't know that, depending on what is considered regulation, and I'll be honest, I don't know that right off the cuff. I think that the situation we've got there right now is probably the best we can do without some sort of reconfiguration of sidewalk, basketball court, etc.
So to be clear, they weren't looking to move the goalpost anymore. They were looking to enhance the framework of the existing goalpost.
Are you talking about the post
Yeah.
thing?
Cool being, or I got away from that. Thank you. No, you're fine.
Thanks for clarifying.
Excuse me. They have nets on those posts though, right?
Yeah. So the nets are, so the issue is, kind of a safety thing, but also just like a standard in terms of like the quality of those nets. They are enduring extreme wear and tear and some complications when retrieving the soccer ball. So they were asking that we enhance the framework on the behind the goal post in order to, just make it a better quality sport.
Because if I can remember, Matt, don't those posts go pretty close to the fence and then pretty close to the basketball court? And can that space accommodate?
Yeah, we'll
Because
just have
I
to
think
look at
it's
the
limited.
specifications of those and see if we can make it fit.
So just to be clear on next steps, we'll follow up and then, you know, have some determination as to whether or not an enhancement of that frame is possible. Thank you.
I had a couple questions. At Treewind Park, after they've moved out now, are we going to be doing anything with the inside of that one office that I brought forth? Is any plans on getting that corrected? At the pavilion at Treewind Park?
We'll need to clean that out since they moved out. Correct.
The other question, on the new basketball courts that we want to put in Glen Oak Park, do we have an idea where we're going to place those by any chance, or that hasn't been discussed or anybody has any?
We talked about a couple different locations. We'd have to narrow that down for sure to make sure where we place them would not impact adjacent users, whether it's homeowners or whether it's other elements within the park. So we have to talk it through again. But we did come up with a couple locations when we were doing the master planning of that park.
And Proctor Center, I got a couple phone calls. There's they're playing baseball and different things down and out in that location. It's been very good. Some of the residents that live there gave me a call, and they were really pleased with the individuals that are there. But they're having a problem getting adequate garbage cans around the baseball field. They said they're way far up near Proctor Center itself, but they don't have cans to clean, to put garbage in close by. Is there any way we can, work on that problem? There's only one there, I understood. I went by, but they were concerned about it.
Yes, sir. We can totally address that issue.
I didn't hear you.
Yes, sir. We can totally address that issue. We can add more cans and more strategic, efficient places for users to access them for sure. We'll work with Jonelle and her team to make that happen.
Okay, because it's been pretty positive. Some of the residents are really pleased with the individuals that are there. So I just wanted to make sure that we accommodate them in terms of getting, garbage cans or whatever they need. So that's basically, well, great, good. Yes, sir. You raise your hand. You said bathrooms?
Can you come to the microphone?
I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Yes. I'm sorry. What was?
So, Tony, I'll talk about what you're doing and then fill in. So from my understanding, Tony is convening a variety of residents and vendors and, just adding some public usage, private programming. And with that higher foot traffic that they're experiencing at Proctor Center, bathroom usage or bathroom access has now been a concern. Is that what you're saying?
He's all kinds of stuff on there. It's very positive down there for the community. And some people don't have the way to use the restroom. And like we said, we clean up after we leave. It's only one garbage can there. So it's filled up to the top. So we're trying to get some more garbage cans, and anything will help, It's just for the community and people across the street that live there. They like the music we play. We don't play, too much explicit music. We don't play that. We just doing something for the community, every Sunday at 4 to 8,
Okay, so you don't have access to the restrooms.
The traffic is kind of bad. I want to block one street off, but I don't know if we can do that or not. The parents said they was fine with it. I mean, the people that live there, they said it was fine, but blocking that street off. But thank you.
Thank you. So the restrooms are they open there or not, or what is the case there? Do we know in that area? I know there's 2 bathrooms we redid down there. We did them. We redone them. Is there a reason why they're not open or anything?
I think they are closed after the building's closed after hours. So when staff leave, they lock up the bathrooms outside. But we could definitely look at that, knowing that there is a user group out there. We can definitely reassess that.
Thank you. Trustee Montez, you have something to say? Oh, okay. Thank you. The shelters at John Gwynn and Martin Luther King Park, have we started on those and with the work that was requested? How's that coming along?
MLK shelter has been painted.
It's been painted? Oh, great. Thank you. John Gwynn? Power washing was an issue also.
We power washed the King shelter, the Gwynn shelter. I don't believe has been power washed yet, but it's on the list for service. Yes, sir.
Thank you. And the Grandview Drive pavilion, what is the work with the IDOT on that issue?
We're still several years out by the time this all plays out.
But they're not ready to move it yet then. Oh, I thought it was, oh, okay. Oh.
There's engineering's underway, but it's a long process.
Yeah,
especially when you involve IDOT.
Okay, thank you. Well, you guys are really, really on it. Anyone else have any other questions of Becky? Thank you. Chief Green, Chief of Police.
Last month's police activity report. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions from the report.
Chief, can you go into a little bit more detail on the battery that happened on the 3rd? It's under Forest Park Nature Center. Did it happen at the center? Happen on the trail? Can you just kind of give more context to that?
That particular instance was on the trail, and it was actually a dispute between a patron and a park employee, which the park employee had informed the trail walker about having a dog off leash, and she was given the impression that it was a stray dog. So the context of that was the park employee was going to go ahead and take custody and control of the dog, and it was actually, without being said, it was actually the trail walker's dog, and he basically bumped her out of the way to grab the dog and went on his way. We didn't have any leads on who that was, but we have it on file, and when leads develop, we will take care of that matter.
Okay, and just you said, I guess, is the park employee okay?
Yeah, it was definitely less than a shove and more of a nudge.
Okay.
You know, does it make any difference if that dog was on or off leash in that park?
It would have been an issue that no dogs are allowed down there. Correct.
Chief, there was a July 19th incident of mob action at Martin Luther King Park. Can you describe what?
That certain circumstance was a gathering of young folks down there on the park, causing a disturbance and fighting amongst themselves. Park officers arrived with city officers, and ultimately were able to reestablish order, and the groups dispersed. Based on the report itself, I believe it was close to 50 plus. That is when they are called. In that particular instance, that's pretty much dead on. Well, roughly between 13 to 19, roughly.
Incidentally, I see the same day resisting or obstructing police officer and aggravated battery, and that was like an hour and a half before that.
Yes. Yes.
That is all the young person?
Yes.
You did?
Yes.
Also, Becker Park. I'm looking at a weapon.
Correct.
What was that all about?
That was a situation where a group or a family were barbecuing, and some, I think it was a couple of uninvited folks came into the group. They were unknown to the group. A disturbance or dispute broke out between the people that were actually using the park for good purposes and the uninvited group, the couple. And during the thing, it is alleged that the guy raised up his shirt to his waistband and had a weapon.
And that's the one out on Route 29. That's Becker Park.
Becker is out on Moloch.
Moloch. Oh, I'm looking at Belfield Park.
Yes.
Yeah, Moloch. Oh, that's out. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Becker Park. Yeah.
Not Woodland Apartments, but there's apartment complex. Right
Aspen
there.
Bluffs or no,
That's
not
down
Aspen.
the street from it.
Down at Woodlands. Okay.
Woodlands.
I have a question on the Riverside, the vehicle. I've noticed before there, I've seen people park motorhomes there. Is that what that was? Like for the weekend, it seems like they'll just like be parked there with nobody in them.
During the daylight hours, there's some activity that goes down there with the RC track. It may be related to that issue, but the officers then will make patrols through those properties to make sure that there isn't anyone parked overnight.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm talking like a motorhome with out-of-state plates, it's just sitting, not in that side of the park. On the other side.
On Riverside?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Near the, the one near the building.
Okay. Let me have a little bit more conversation with you. I'll make sure that I get a little more clarity.
If we were like leasing it out to people or something.
No.
Chief, so our young people are back in school. Talk to us about how, activity has tracked this summer compared to previous summers.
I think it is pretty similar. It was a busy summer. For us to maintain order, I think we were very successful in it. But in regards to one summer to the next, I think it was a garden variety.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you. I noticed that there's an uptick out Summer Park now. Is there things going on out there? I've noticed quite a few.
Summer Park has a couple of issues with one offender is basically with the dogs being off leash from the neighborhood. Insofar as anything of violence or significance, not so much. It's mostly the dogs off the leash on this particular offender.
Okay, well, thank you. All righty. And the other is not as bad. Deadweiler Park, Grandview Drive, Deadweiler injuries, mainly speeding.
Yes.
We have those type of issues. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions of Chief Green? Chief, thank you again.
Thank you.
Okay, committee reports, Planning Committee, Peoria Zoo Memorial Kiosk naming.
This was presented in planning. It is, if you've been to the zoo recently, you've seen the new kiosk that is welcoming people as they come to the door. That was constructed in part by donations made in memory of Henry Chappie Chapman, who was a PZS board member for many years. PZS actually matched those gifts to help us put the kiosk in place. And they have asked for approval to officially name that kiosk the Henry L. Chappie Chapman Memorial Kiosk and have signage affixed to the kiosk saying that same thing. Second.
Second.
Question? Roll call.
Trustee Burchey.
Aye.
Trustee Covington.
Aye.
Trustee Harrod.
Aye.
Trustee Hill.
Aye.
Trustee Montez.
Aye.
Vice President Sierra.
Aye.
President Johnson.
Aye, motion carries.
Thank you.
Planning Committee again, Luthi Bench, Brick Memorial.
This was reviewed in planning committee as well, and staff recommends approving the request by the Peoria Garden Club to provide and install a shaded brick seating area at Luthi Botanical Garden.
Question. Roll call.
Trustee Birchey.
Aye.
Trustee Covington.
Aye.
Trustee Hara.
Aye.
Trustee Hill.
Aye.
Trustee Montez.
Aye.
Vice President Sierra.
Aye.
President Johnson.
Aye, motion carries.
Thank you.
8A, new business, the naming policy.
Mr. President, this is the policy that we discussed in the Strategic Ad Hoc Committee, and it had its first reading at our meeting on July 24th. It's now up for a second reading and a vote. I'll move approval.
I'll second.
Question?
Yes. You know, I was looking at the document the other day. You know, it's really well put together, and I think it provides a policy that'll help us in the future. But there's a portion of the document that I'm kind of questioning, and that is the 5-year waiting period. In working for the Park District, the years that I did, I had the opportunity to work with 3 people who now have buildings or parks named after them. They're exceptional. I mean, they were exceptional people, and the naming of these facilities were fairly soon after their retirement, and deservedly so, because of the things that they accomplished for the Park District in their time as either board president or as the director. One of them I didn't know, Leo Donovan, who they named after the Northmore Golf Course. I think that 5 years waiting, well, any time just diminishes a person's accomplishments, and 5 years diminishes it a bit. And sometimes delay is a form of denial. So in that, not to, like I say, I believe it's a very well-crafted policy. But because of the time period, it's a document that after some thought, I feel I cannot approve. So I will leave it at that.
How long was Mr. Donovan off?
Oh, I don't know, 17, 18 years. He was around in the 50s.
But did we approve it while he was still? No. I guess his legacy stuck with him, huh?
Well, I don't know that he was around when they named it after him.
Okay, there was a second. There was a motion and a second. Question? Roll call?
Trustee Birchey.
Aye.
Trustee Covington.
Aye.
Trustee Hara.
Aye.
Trustee Hill.
Nay.
Trustee Montez.
No.
Vice President Sierra. President Johnson.
No. Motion carries.
Motion's not carried.
Not-
Can
I mean, the motion didn't carry. I'm sorry. Motion failed. Yes, I'm sorry. Yes.
I would hope that it would come back with some moderation or
Let
consideration
me
for
just
that
say, I
time.
have no intent whatsoever to bring this back.
Okay. 8B, agreement with Skycone Partners Development Assessment Feasibility Study.
As part of the process to begin a capital campaign to support improvements at Peoria Zoo, staff have been working with Peoria Zoological Society to assess the viability of bringing in Skystone Partners to do a feasibility study. In conversations with Skystone, they offer a couple different levels of assessment as part of that feasibility study. If we are able to access a development assessment, then they will help us to look at our entire fundraising structure across the district to include Peoria Zoological Society and the zoo. A traditional feasibility study would just look at past campaigns. Because of the significant amount of change and turnover that's happened since the last time we did a capital campaign to now, We do recommend the need for that development assessment because that is above and beyond the cost of a feasibility study that PZS is willing to undertake. Staff is asking the board to allocate dollars to cover that gap between the development assessment and a traditional feasibility study because of the impact that that can have for all parties involved. As such, we recommend the approval of payment in the amount of $30,000 to Peoria Zoological Society to defray a portion of the costs associated with that feasibility study focused on zoo capital improvements and coordination of development efforts across the district.
Is there a motion?
I move to approve.
Is there a second? Question?
I get it. Discussion. You know, I read this contract and I have to say that I was just totally confused. We're paying it. They make it sound like they're doing a development assessment feasibility on steroids. And I read and thought about it, and it's just what they're supposed to do when they do this. So what is the, and they're not from our community otherwise, in addition. So I guess my question is, what's so, this needs to be done, I suppose, but why is this so special?
So first of all, Skystone Partners, we became aware of them because of past relationships with other zoos and the impact that they have had on their fundraising efforts. Max Lakes, our new zoo director, has past experience with them. They also were vetted by PZS board member Stan Butler, who knows folks at the Knoxville Zoo who have worked with Skystone and could report out about the successful impact that they had on their fundraising efforts. Because of their extensive zoo experience, we wanted to talk to them, and in talking with them, because of the interplay between the zoo itself, Peoria Zoological Society, and the Park District, simply doing a feasibility study that would look at the success of past campaigns and focus solely on capital campaign, really, that's fine. But if we want to be better at this and we want to set ourselves up for the long term in order to really be better development professionals, which is one of the things that we have talked about in this space about trying to diversify our streams of revenue, we feel strongly that this is a good investment now to help us build out structure so that we connect and collaborate better in the district to include Peoria Zoological Society in order to help raise dollars to improve our organization.
So, I guess I understand why this is important. I guess what I'm trying to get a better grasp of is what is it that these folks are going to offer us that our staff doesn't currently have access to, or the expertise, or whatever the case may be. And I want to make sure I frame that appropriately, because I know we have a very strong development team. I mean, it's been one, if not two folks, and a lot of that has been spearheaded by yourself. But what is it that these folks are bringing to the table that makes this $30,000 so worth it?
They bring the capacity to raise millions of dollars and the experience that shows that they have helped to do that in other facilities like ours. It is hard to assess yourself and make change, and especially when you know what you're doing, but you think you're right. So to have somebody come from the outside, this is one of those situations where having an outside consultant come in and assess how things work, to make recommendations about changes in structure or how we allocate people time, or even the software that we use that can help us to improve our efficiency. Given all the things that we're trying to do, this feels like an investment that will create a return that is exponential, ideally, from this investment. By us paying into this, we will, I believe, have a better result related to the feasibility study. That's something you can't do for yourself. You can't say, hey, would you give me money? Right? People aren't going to answer those questions. So you always bring an outside consultant in to do that feasibility study, which includes interviews where you talk to folks all over the community and say, hey, what do you think about the zoo? What do you think about the Zoological Society? Would you donate to a capital campaign if it was phrased like this or if it was like that. People just aren't honest if you ask those questions about yourself, right? It takes that
Absolutely.
outside consultant. So while we have them here and we have access to their expertise, our goal is to maximize the potential long-term impact that we are able to have with this investment by adding this extra piece to it that allows us to evaluate and improve the way our development department in the district works with development staff in PZS, works with folks who are dabbling in development in any of our facilities
the
as they build
board.
relationships. So the idea is for us to get more efficient. We've talked at length about data analytics and needing to know how somebody uses the park district and how to track their dollars across the different relationships that they may have with touch points in the district. Working with folks like this will help us to build out a system so that we are able to know those things about people and meet them where they are and support not only their desires, but hopefully also build relationships that result someday in whether that's, planned giving or major gifts. But this is the work that we are good at, but we're not great at. And I truly believe these people can help us be great at it.
Understood. Trustee here, I think
I think having an outside consultant is very important, especially one that has experience with zoos and different parts of the country, and can, we have a development staff, but as you said, we haven't done a capital campaign, which means we haven't done the assessments and all of those things. And I imagine fundraising, it does change and different things happen across the country, and they'll know what's been successful and hasn't been in other places. So I think, I can't speak to is the cost what it should be, but I think what we need to have come out of it is on target.
I very much agree. I will tell you, sorry, just to that point, they did say they're not the cheapest, they're not the most expensive, right? But you get what you pay for. And we believe in talking with them multiple times and seeing some of their work product from other efforts, that they will give us what we need to take a step forward.
I actually really support this, but my question is, I don't know the answer. If this is funds that weren't allocated for this purpose originally, should this discussion be had in Finance Committee first?
So because of the timing of this, they came back with a proposal. Peoria Zoological Society has actually accepted the proposal, and they have said they will pay, but they're asking us to contribute, to wait another month and a half for this to go. I don't know that finance approval is necessary because we do have funding sources where this will fit. But because of the timing of it, we're trying to make our commitment so that they can execute that agreement and get these folks started.
so. Just to clarify, PZA have already, or PZS, they've already accepted. They've moved on this already.
They haven't signed a contract. They're waiting to see what dollars we will bring to the table, but they have approval to work through the process so that once we have approval tonight, we can move forward with execution of the contract and not be stuck in another month cycle because PZS only meets once a month.
Got it. So it was presented to their board and the board said move ahead. Okay, understood.
Tim, do you think it needs to go to Finance Committee?
Any other questions? Can I get a motion?
I thought I already moved to approve. Yeah, but I'll make a motion again.
Ready?
I believe Trustee Hill seconded.
Roll call.
Trustee Burgee,
Aye.
Trustee Covington,
Aye.
Trustee Harrod,
Aye.
Trustee Hill,
Aye.
Trustee Montez,
Aye.
Vice President Sierra,
Aye.
President Johnson.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, the artist agreement with Preston Jackson 8C.
I just had one question in regards to the landscaping surrounding structures, and I may have missed it. Is that something that's been determined and bid yet? No?
So there's a larger budget, Trustee Hill, beyond the monies allocated to the sculpture. As we move through the process, he has said, and as part of our conversation the last time, he said that he would help us to develop that so that it all was cohesive, but that would be outside of the scope of this specific agreement.
Correct. And then I was looking through the agreement and it looks like he is tasked with delivering and he has a 6-month window. I just was trying to figure out if the site would be ready for him to deliver it in 6 months.
That was the best guess. It was. So I think as we move through this process, there's going to be, I don't know how long it's going to take for that interconnectivity with the local Native American groups. So I know that there has been a strong desire to get this to the finish line. So I was probably, as I am sometimes, a little over ambitious. If we don't hit that, we will execute some
So we
sort
could
of an
say generally
addendum. But our
spring.
intent is to work with him and get this done. Yes.
Well, and I think more my question was just communicating to the neighborhood because I know that they are very eager. So are we looking at spring of maybe?
I think that Mr. Jackson can tell us what works best for him and his schedule, and then we can do our best to align our resources with that.
Thank you.
Just quickly and for the record, so we're moving on this project, this the sculpture, because there was a commitment prior to us passing that statue policy for us to revisit or for us to potentially fund or collaborate to find something for placemaking. And I think that's important for the record because we have a policy currently that says we won't fund projects like this. So I think for public consumption, I want everyone to understand why it is that we're moving on this now.
I guess 2 comments. First of all, there was quite a bit of discussion in the minutes in the last meeting. I don't recall if it was our meeting here or whether it was a strategic ad hoc about us moving forward to commit to spend dollars on this before we had before we had I want to say a picture or a design in front of us. And yeah, just stick with me.
Yeah.
And the point I want to make is this, for those people who raised this the last meeting, and I think it was giving voice to some voices that had been raised in the community, this agreement answers that question because what it says is it commits the artist to a process that, in my experience, is very typical of other artists, especially those with the reputation of Mr. Jackson. And what it says is that, for those who haven't read it, that he's going to do a clay version of this, and then a wax version of this, and then a final version of this, and we will pay him in steps. He's not going to get $200,000 before we see and approve a design. He's going to get $25,000, as I understand it, in various stages. And then at the point that the clay model of this is prepared for our review, we have the option to drop out of the contract if we don't like the design. So just so people are clear and not misled by the minutes of our last meeting, this contract is very typical in form. Number 2 is we're not spending $200,000 without knowing what we're getting. Number 3, we're committing to a very typical artistic process. And finally, we will see what the final product is going to look like before we spend more than, I think it's $50,000. So again, I just want to clear that up from the minutes from last time, because I don't think that was made clear last time. And I'll vote clearly in favor of this.
And just to clarify, it's 100,000.
Yes. For
100,000.
It's it's up to $200,000 for the entire project. It's $100,000 for the art piece, so that we have those other dollars for sidewalk and site and chairs and all that jazz.
Mm-hmm. And then Steve, I'm sorry, I just want to confirm, I was looking for a confirmation when I made my earlier commentary. So just to confirm, we're moving on funding this project because this was a commitment prior to the statute policy that we adopted, correct?
So it was determined by the board that this does, because this qualifies for that exception that the board can apply to the
Okay.
policy. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, we voted on it down at Bradley Park.
I recall that. Yeah, we'll just get going.
Well, maybe the person who wasn't clear on the art policy was me. And so not the art policy, but the actual statute. And my questions were that we had not had some type of presentation by the artist. And I think that's a legitimate thing when you are spending $100,000. Now, I did read the contract, and of course it does pay in those steps, but you got to pay $25,000 before you drop out if you don't like what's going on. And so that was my,
Have you seen the model?
well, yeah, if you see the models, right, to see the models, right. And so my concern was that we approved something before. I mean, we had drawings, but there's something about one-dimensional piece that doesn't quite speak to a three-dimensional piece. And so that was my concern, that we had, given what we were paying the artist, that we had that he wasn't able to come in and make that presentation. So we'd have a better idea. And for me, a better reason to vote for or against it. So my vote last time was against it. And I'm still not satisfied with having to pay $25,000 to find out if this is a piece that I want or not. So I will probably be voting against this item.
I appreciate that. I do want to just say that Preston Jackson was out of town at our last meeting, and that's why he sent. I know. I'm just telling you though that we have been pushing this calendar, and he was out of town. He was out of state, and so he sent those drawings, and I presented those to the best of my ability. I did not know that there was a request for him to be here tonight, and so I did not ask him. He had a rededication earlier today, and so I didn't make that request of him. So if that, don't hold that against him. Hold that, against us and our try to push this schedule as fast as we can.
And I understand, and I respect, that we all have things to do and places to be, but on the other hand, a job's a job too. And
Any other questions?
Just for sort of clarity, if this were a project for an architect to build a building from scratch, what would the process be? Would we have a contract where they'd have to do all the designs before they got paid? So it seems like we're asking somebody to put in tremendous creative work. And so there has to be some give and take in that process, especially trust when you've got a an artist of such stature. Yeah.
His art today was in Washington Post, a picture of his art on the Springfield project, because Biden is going to approve the national monument for various 6 different places, I think, in the United States. But a picture of his work was right on the Post.
Well, I appreciate that analogy, but I'd also say, to me, it's more like saying to Marie Cassatt, listen, before I commit to having you paint a portrait of my family, give me a portrait of my family so I can look at it. This is an artist we're dealing with, and it's a little bit different, I think, than an architect, but I appreciate what you're getting at.
Did we get a motion?
I move to approve.
I'll second.
Question? Roll call?
Trustee Birchey,
Aye.
Trustee Covington,
Aye.
Trustee Harrod,
Aye.
Trustee Hill,
Aye.
Trustee Montez,
no.
Vice President Sierra,
Aye.
President Johnson.
Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you.
We need a strategic plan 2024 QT update.
So as part of your packet, and then I did hand you a hard copy, we're trying at the last presentation of our Q1 process, we did this slideshow and you saw videos and it took a long time and you guys were really excited about it, I know, but there was a request to try something different and give you a narrative that gave you the high points of Q2. So that's what you have in front of you. It is a little less multimedia. There's still a lot of really good content in there. When you think about Q2 as April through June, obviously you think about big things like the Be Anything Worldwide Day of Play experience. You think about Parkapalooza. And out of those pieces, there are a couple of different items that I want to highlight for you. And really, you can read the narrative, but what I'd like to do is send you to the back of the packet. Just put your finger right there. Sorry, just for a second. If you go to attachment, attachment A, which is about halfway through the packet, you'll see in this chart, tiny though it is, it should look familiar to you. This is from the April 30th board retreat. And so one of the things that was a big focus of our work in Q2 was to organize these big projects, the things that President Johnson has identified as those areas of concern. And so you'll see the timeline for 24, 25, 26, tied to the zoo, to Glen Oak Park, to Proctor Center, Owen Center, and to golf. So that's one I just wanted to make sure that you had a copy of. Attachment B ties to the work that we've been doing under our commitment to environmental sustainability. And so we've had some rather spirited conversations over the last several weeks about annuals versus perennials and how we should be allocating our not only our dollars, but also our people resources. So this is a philosophy that we wanted to share with you that has been developed by staff that really highlights the need and the reason for our planting of perennial flower beds instead of annuals, and what that means for us as an organization and how we advocate for environmental stewardship. Attachment C, which is the next page, actually came out of an experience that we had at Parkapalooza, but it is something that I think is going to be, as we continue to refine it, a very, very useful tool for us in the district. One of our strategic goals was to build out a program and event checklist. And so we took the elements of a public event and we put those down the first column on the left side. And then we ran them through filters, much like what we do, Trustee Birchie, with a staff recommendation for the board. We are doing this assessment for our programs and events tied to vibrancy, equitable access, inclusion and accessibility, I can't even read my own squish, safety, security, and environmental sustainability. So we ask a series of yes/no questions. Where there are no's, we talk about how to address that in the future and how to make that better so that the next time around we are able to support our community and our mission and values at a better level. So we've tested this out. We've tried it out with our Founders Day planning. We look forward to making it a part of our community and signature event planning in the future, but it is a tool I think that is a nice just reminder to us of the structural requirements for a quality event in the Park District. Attachment D is our impact report, and that really is the roll-up of everything that has happened in the Park District in the first 6 months. You've seen this format before on a quarterly basis and a monthly basis. This is the first 6 months of the year. So we wanted you to just see all the great things that have happened. And you can imagine now it's August. So this numbers have already probably a couple of them have multiplied given the time of year that we're in. But we look forward to sharing those as we continue. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. You did get this a couple of days ago, but I wanted you to have the hard copy because some of those charts are kind of twingy to read.
I have a question for the staff. So we're just going back to attachment B. Are we talking about replacing all flower beds with perennials? So some of the beds will have annuals.
Yes.
So will it be like a combination of annuals and perennials and spaces left? Because, one thing, perennials, I think if planted, and I have, that's really all I have in my yard, but annuals have a splash of color when they start to bloom. And I know they require more maintenance because they have to be watered all the time. But they add so much to a flower bed of perennials, because perennials sometimes take time to bloom. And then as their season goes on, unless you're watering them all the time, so the effect would be the same, they tend to fade. And, we have probably some flagship locations that probably need that kind. I think about Bradley Park, that corner at the University of Bradley and at Farmington and Main Street is tremendous. She has done an incredible job there. And, the Riverplex right there in front, there's a tremendous mix of the of the perennials, but the annuals and the color there really set that whole location off. So that's my question. I understand that annuals require a little bit more maintenance, but perennials do too. Or, by the end of summer, they get burned out. So,
Trustee Montez, help me out on the what would we call those that's in front of the theater, the Playhouse Theater, not the Playhouse Theater. I mean, the Players Theater. We used to have those big, round, beautiful flowers.
the daylilies.
What was those called?
They had
Because it's not there
They
anymore.
had daffodils, but they have daylilies, right? They used to be those yellow daylilies. Yeah.
It's beautiful. Yeah.
Well, the daylilies should
Yeah.
bloom all most of summer, right?
It used to be very colorful. And down at Glen Oak Park at the our old headquarters, those were really beautiful flowers. And
The
that,
planting areas in the old administration.
yeah, an old
entrance.
administration building. That was some of my concerns. And then out here as well, the
Well,
flowers.
those are mostly annuals, right? In that area, there are some perennials in that area, but
That's correct. So, very good question. As we kind of go back in time and discussed at planning committee level, this has been years ago as we started strategic planning efforts and modified green space maintenance efforts dating all the way back to, I believe, 2017. We did choose some focal point areas around the city, including Columbia Park, the corner of Bradley that you just talked about, Route 29 at Grandview Drive. Those are focal point beds that add vibrancy to our community that will remain annuals or a combination of annuals and perennials. Our charge is to be trailblazers in environmental and financial stewardship together, to find ways to better mitigate carbon, to find better ways to manage stormwater, to find better ways to steward our financial and human resources. And so as we endeavor to do that, there will be some ebb and flow to how we handle that. So there may be some hybrid approaches, Trustee Montez, as to perennial plantings until things are established. I will tell you, Christy Shoemaker and Jacob Cuban are here tonight, and they're passionate about this work and very talented and skilled. They are trying to create plans that will create color and vibrancy throughout the season and not just be an early flash in the spring and then throughout the rest of the summer be kind of dormant looking. The other thing that we also understand in being trailblazers in this effort is changing people's mindsets and getting them comfortable with, they're used to seeing big beds of annual flowers with lots of different colors, right? There's a period of time to change people's mindsets and help them to see that this is doable. You're correct about maintenance costs. It's not maintenance free. Once you get things established, as you know, the maintenance becomes less. So the upfront costs are a little bit higher, but over time, those 3 to 5 to 7 years, then you start to see those management costs go down and the vibrancy go up. So we are very aware of the need for the park district to be leaders in beautifying our community and adding vibrancy while doing it in an environmentally friendly way and a fiscally responsible way.
Well, I think just merely from the fact that we have parks in our name, a park district, that it suggests that this is what we do. And I just want to suggest that what I'm getting at is that there's some amount of maintenance that's needed anyway in the course of whether you have perennials or annuals.
Yeah, that's correct. Some other examples, the planting beds around SIDS, that was a hybrid approach that started out with some perennial plantings, but were supplemented for a couple of years with annual flowers until the perennials really created season-long growth that created vibrancy around that building at Donovan Park. But that's another example. But you're correct; it's not maintenance-free.
I just got back from England and I was touring some of the beautiful gardens in the Cotswolds, and I didn't see any annuals. I mean, these are famous gardens. The only place I would see them is like outside of a little eating establishment, and even the castles, they would have them in planters, and lots of annuals and planters. As far as in the ground, they were all sequentially perennials that were blooming as they should. I guess I think I agree with the trend and what you're heading for.
And I don't disagree with the trend. I'm just talking about sometimes it's needed for the effect of, beautifying the building, that annuals have a place in the.
Yes, sir. I understand, and to confirm, those focal point beds around the park district that have those annuals, that we're not deviating from that plan. We're committed to that is currently in effect.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I do have some questions about the update. So under Environment Pillar 1, Strategy 1.2, it makes reference to a statement that has been created on strategies that prioritize right-sized sustainable acquisition and divestment strategies across the district, and that document will be signed by a Nature Preserve Commission or presented to. Will we, as a board or planning committee, be provided that? I mean, what is that and how does it work? It's on the second page.
Page 2 to 9.
Yeah, they aren't. It's Environment Pillar 1, Strategy 1.2.
Okay. So the nature preserve documents that it's referring to in there are the management plans for nature preserves. And so those are renewed on, there's like I want to say 5-year plan. That could be wrong. So we have 4 nature preserves in our system. And so staff create those management plans. We send them to the Nature Preserve Commission for review, and then they can check out like our best management practices on there, make sure that we're accounting for like endangered species and that our burn plans are up to date with that. Typically, Emily signs off on those as well as the Nature Preserve Commission.
I appreciate that. I just didn't catch the fact it was only certain criteria
That's part of the weird of not using the entire giant spreadsheet because it does lose context periodically. So I apologize for that. I'll try to get better at this as we go.
And you might want to, I do have then, if you just go down at the bottom of the page, Pillar 2, strategy, 1 point, well, it's the bottom of the page. Programming group has created a rubric to determine whether programming of facilities meets sustainability targets. Could you sort of explain what that is, and maybe we could have at the next programming committee meeting, and a better understanding of it?
Yeah, absolutely. So we were tasked with creating an inventory of our sustainability programming. And so we determined as a group that we needed to have a rubric to determine what met sustainability criteria, because we offer a lot of different programming across the district. So something that happens maybe at the Playhouse, say they're doing a craft program, that could potentially meet some sustainability targets if they're using recycled materials. Obviously, most of the programming that we do at the zoo or the nature center, those are all focused on nature and the environment, so they automatically, but there are programs that we do at Proctor Center, at the Playhouse, and other places that could also be meeting that, some of the day camps. So we created the rubric so that we could determine which programs would actually fit into our inventory, and our programmers are working on the inventory sheet. Currently, I know the zoo uploaded their programming in there today, so it's a work in progress. But yes, we can show you guys that rubric and provide updates as needed.
My last question is, so this would be page, I guess page 4. I'm just counting single pages, but they're double-sided, sorry. Strategy 2.1 under vibrancy 2, the action step about 3rd of July. Going forward with July 3rd discussions, I know we have September 7th, which is another learning experience with a community event in the park. But how will we, and how should we evaluate for next July 3rd? What information do we want to make sure we have collected so that when we have the discussions that we will be, we'll sort of be able to evaluate what next July 3rd could be like? And I guess I would also ask, in terms of budgeting, will the funding for July 3rd be in the budget?
I'll answer the second part first because that's the easier of the two. Yes, our intent is to put dollars into the special events budget to allow for some event, so the dollars will carry over. What we do with that is up to your direction. I would start the response to question 1 with the data points that we collected and talked about earlier this year and last fall. And I would carry those through, like we talked about the other day, right? Where you take the police reports, and we had that through 2023. Let's add 2024 to that. Let's talk about experiences at July 3rd Street Belong to Me. Let's talk about what happens on September 7th, because that event by design is going to go later into the evening to try to help us see what that looks like. I would strongly ask, and we're trying to compile that data as we go, but I feel like because we have talked about this as offering both of those events and, in short-term replacement in 2024, that we should conduct both of those events and then have a conversation about what makes sense for 2025. As we do that, because of where that falls, obviously, in our budget conversation, we are committed to keeping those dollars in the 2025 budget.
Okay, and I know that we really, because of when the discussions started for last year, for this year, because of the issue with not the issue, but the competition for time with the budget, that we got a late start. So if there's a way that we can have some way to do something, at least decide what kind of data we want to look at, because I would be interested to know what criteria do we really need to achieve to feel comfortable having something later in the evening, those kinds of things. And I don't know what the what is, but
We can absolutely start to think about that, and we'll build it out together. That's another good topic for the program committee when it meets next.
I know this is a very thin line. The topic of July 3rd, I would encourage that although this may start in programming, we quickly find a way for that to be in front of the full board. That way there can be some there needs to be a collective directive from this board to the staff. So yes, of course, programming is a great starting point, but maybe, before or during budget season time, I don't know, that makes its way to the full board.
My question would be the amount that's going to be funded, and I hope it's close to what we had budgeted this past year.
that's all I have.
Carry through.
Okay, I don't know, before we get into the budget overview and then we have calendar consent, is it okay with the board if we allow number 11? I think there's some citizens that want to request to address the board. Are you okay with that, or do we want to wait? It'll keep them here, or how does the board feel? You okay with that? Okay, we're going to move this up a little bit. There are citizens here that want to request to address the board. You can come forward. State your name and address.
Hello, my name is Sandra Bailey. I live at 810 North Douglas, and I've been a resident of Peoria, Illinois for 60 plus years. And I had wanted to address the fact that July the 3rd was a very not good experience for us this year because they didn't have the fireworks up at Glen Oak. And that day basically had came a day like people that live in that area up there where they looked forward for that day, and we looked forward to going up there. It was just like that day was like a family reunion. The 4th of July, that 3rd, and Soul Fest is like a reunion for us. Those 2 dates, we just get together with anybody and they become your family. And it was a lot of people who was really upset about that because we was looking very forward to that because we meet new peoples and everybody have their yard set up. They was real nice and waters. Everybody was just so friendly, and I just didn't understand why we could have that, why we had that taken away from us this year. And that was a very depressing thing. So I just was really depressed about that because we look forward to that for years, and then y'all just did not say y'all. It was just taken away from us, just taken away from us. So that's what I was here for about the 3rd. And Soul Fest sold out this year, and which was a good thing. But I think we need our 3rd back.
Thank you. Anyone else want to address the board? State your name and address, please.
Demetrius Randall, 6808 North Basket Oak Drive. I'm going to be very brief. I just want to bring to your attention, as I did to your CEO, that there is an employee that I'd like to share some information with you about. It's good.
Okay.
So many times you hear negativity And I just wanted to share with you an experience that I had, some family members and friends, during the time that we came in to purchase tickets for Soul Fest. I came in on a couple of occasions and was greeted by this person with a huge smile, a smile in her voice. And see, I know customer service, and when you can hear the smile in their face and in their voice, I should say, then you know that that person is eager to serve you and give you their best, and they want to listen. So I came in and I encountered this young lady at your desk, front desk there. She was greeting a citizen who had come in and had a ticket, a parking ticket of some sort. And after she spoke with that person and shared how her empathy for the situation without throwing the park district under the bus, that person melted. You could just see her just melting in her hands. And then there was another gentleman who was here who I happened to know, and he had just recently retired from Northeastern University. And I said, "You have great customer service," to this lady. And he said, "She sure does." He confirmed it. And I went home and I talked to some family members, and I said, "I encountered this young lady at the Park District office, and she had awesome customer service." And they confirmed that they had been in here and that they too had encountered her, and what a keeper for the Park District. And this person I spoke with in the family happens to be really involved in customer service. She is a manager in customer service for a major utility company. And she's not in Peoria any longer, but she travels for the company. And I want you to know that you have a keeper upstairs in Miss Erica Brown. She has this accent, first of all, that grabs your attention. And then she smiles. She's so helpful. And you don't want to lose a person like that. When you get someone of that quality who is greeting the general public and is your representative from the beginning, I think you want to keep them. All right? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any others? Thank you. Okay, moving on to 8E, budget overview.
President Johnson, I'm sorry. Could we just for a moment go quickly back to 8E? I just have one question.
Okay.
And it'll be quick. Emily, Osborne's funding, did it get stripped for this budget cycle? I know that was a proposal from the governor.
I don't think so.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know. Thank you. Thanks, President Johnson.
Okay. Budget overview.
You have in front of you a hard copy version of the attachment that was provided as part of your budget pack or your agenda packet as requested by Trustee Montez at our last meeting. We have worked to put together a timeline for how information comes to us from staff, as well as how that is then spun up and brought to you as a board. So we have tried to find a balance here that certainly honors the internal reviews that have to happen at a staff level in order to have data to come to you that is valuable for you to spend time with, as well as opportunities for engagement and education of the community that lead up to a budget presentation. So I hope you've had a chance to review this.
I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have about this proposed process.
Any questions?
I think it's a very good document and gives a good idea. And we had something like this last year. It gave us kind of the overview of the process of the budget. So here are my questions and that I had about the budget process itself. And I'm going to start with a little bit of a story. So I'm going to take a little walk around the block here to get to my point. I went to the golf subcommittee on Monday. And just for the rest of you trustees, Trustee Birchie ran a tremendous subcommittee, an overview of what the golf department does. And of course, the golf staff and administrative staff contributed to a much bigger, fuller overview than I was expecting. Now I knew that they had some onboarding going, but you know, I went because I needed to get a little bit more familiar with golf, you know, with the budget process coming up. Staff started with history, and then they went into revenue and expenditures, and then they went into the facilities and the different programs and what they're offering and the trends of golf, and talking a little about some of their strategic plans and what they were looking at the future, and maybe some of the things that were going to be coming up for review later on. So an hour and a half later, I felt like I really knew I had enough information to make decisions about golf projects, golf programs, golf facilities, the golf staff, the personnel that's involved with it. It was really way more than I expected, but I only really had time to stay for an hour, but it was so intriguing and there was so much to it. I mean, I worked here for 35 years and I learned more in that hour and a half than I probably did in those 35 years that I've been with the Park District. And that's really a tribute to the staff and the time that they put into to provide that information. And this is to the committee members, not necessarily to the trustees. They're providing this information to trustees. I felt that if they asked a question about irrigation, our turf problems areas, maintenance of facilities, personnel that they needed for other projects, I could easily say yes or no without a lot of questions because they were just so in depth, and I felt like it was just what I needed to do my duties as a trustee. Okay. The request I had for a more open process really pertains to that. That the amount of information that we get in a budget process, it can't come through just one person or two people standing up front. I'm gonna go back and say this years ago, I really tried to avoid saying this because of the amount of time I've worked here. But years ago, we would go through a process where we would actually, and President Johnson, you know this, Joyce, you might know this too. We sat through presentations where people talked about that very thing. They talked about the programs, their revenue, their expenditures, the surplus, the deficit, the number of people that came to their programs, the new programs that they're going, how the new programs are going, what they plan to do for the future, that we really had a handle, or that the staff really had a handle, and assuring the trustees that they had that handle on what the business was. And in the course of that, the trustees knew what each individual department, as they made the presentation, was doing. Do we have that similar understanding of the, not just the special events and the programs that we see and just kind of pop up that we drive by? Do we have that kind of understanding of the budget process that we can say yay or nay to the votes? And we do say yay. You know, a couple times I've asked about a program or expenditures, or, you know, if we're doing this or that, and I've heard, well, it's in the budget. This is the budget book. What do you remember from the budget presentation besides the narrative that was given to you by one or two people? And we had the opportunity to ask questions. That's the in-depth information is really the kind of transparency I'm asking for. I'm not, I believe the staff operates genuinely and for the good of the public. But I'm really just asking for the opportunity to learn about what's actually going into programs. A couple times I've seen budgets in there and I have no idea what they do. They're new names and programs change over time, but I'd like to know what's going on. So I believe it can be done with I mean, for the most part, it's going to take some explanation with a simple summary sheet. And we have a lot of this on the sheets, but we have the department summary on the department summary, and that's for, I don't know, you could say, I don't know, what sports or parks or small parks or whatever, but it lists the department, the different department lines, the descriptions, the revenue, the expenditures, previous fiscal year, approved amount, revised, and these are on there already. New, the upcoming proposed fiscal year, surplus or deficit at the bottom of the page, though, and that isn't on there. You have to do the math yourself. And I think that's important. The revenue, whether you have a surplus or deficit, I think that we need to know that information. Unless you got your calculator pretty handy and you go through every one of the pages, and how many different department lines, how many different departments are in Carrie? Can you give an idea of how many lines for each different department? Oh, you don't have to tell me that right now. I'm sorry. Program attendance, that we can figure out what we're paying per capita. That the per capita may not be as important to some people as others, but it figures out, you know, how much we're making per person that come to our programs. Current fees and revised fees. And on the same sheet, because we have some of this information, but it's down in appendixes. And so you have to go back and forth. And to me, that's a distraction. And you can't do that properly. And you don't really get an idea of what's going on in a budget when you have to go back and forth, and then you have to calculate some of your own costs. And that's honestly, since most of the information is ready in a spreadsheet, I'm taking it put together in a spreadsheet, correct? Or some type of database that it can be calculated and then transferred over to the pages in some way, so that we don't have to guess if something is making money or not making money. So something, and you know, we can ask about trends and if it's going up or it's going down. Our programs are expanding or they're decreasing. That's a transparency that I'm asking about, so that we don't have to guess. And if we were still doing the calculations by calculator and trying pencil and paper, it might be a big ask. But the way that we do it now from the desk, from computers, and it's downloaded into a spreadsheet, those calculations can be formulated so it comes right up on when it's printed, it comes right up on the page. And that might be a little bit of work ahead of time to create those pages, but I think if you create one page, you cut and paste, you cut and paste, and I might be simplifying this, but knowing the process, I know how some of this goes too. That's my request for transparency. That's what my request for transparency was. I'm pretty familiar with the agenda and the date and all that, and I think if you take a look at some of how this is prepared, this probably could even save some of the time having it in one presentation than having to go to multiple committee meetings and answer questions and ask for direction if it's done in a timely manner. So that's, I'm going to say it again. A long time ago, we could make these presentations and we could make it one time. And it does put a little bit more weight on the trustees for the time that it takes, because, with the golf committee, it took an hour and a half to go through that. It was well worth it for me. If I didn't have to be somewhere at 1:30, I would have stayed that whole time. It was well worth it. And I'm pretty confident it would be well worth it for all of you to sit through that, the knowledge you would come away with in that process, I think would astound you, really, if you're interested. So thank you for hearing me out. Many thanks.
Does anyone have any other questions? Trustee Montez, comments?
This thing is going to be like the death of me. Gosh. I'm not. So I feel like you bring up a lot of valid points. And I too also had a lot of those concerns when I first joined the board, really because it was just a learning curve for me, and when you first start speaking about having a better breakdown of what all our budget entails, the first thing that I thought of was our appendix, and you hit on that. So I guess I'm trying to better understand what it is that you are requesting of staff during the budget process. Is it that staff reevaluates how they present and formulate the budget book?
Yes, to both.
Okay.
And that the staff that there be a presentation by each department head that gives I'm going to say, for lack of a better word, when I think when one or two people speak for the whole park district, sometimes that message is change. It's not, if it were given by a department head, we would hear maybe a little different message coming directly from the person that has the concerns or the responsibility for a particular department.
Okay. And again, I'm just trying to make sure I understand. So you would
I don't mean any ill intention, by the way, when I say that.
Oh, no,
But
I'm not
you have
taking
to
it that way.
abbreviate your comments sometimes when you're compressing a lot of information to a short period of time.
Yeah, no, and I'm not taking it that way at all. I'm just trying to understand that way the staff can and I can walk away with the understanding of what's being asked. So you would like to see each of the department heads take a more active role in the budget presentation component?
Yes.
Okay.
Just a couple comments if I could. So first of all, thank you for your comments about the golf committee meeting, and that's exactly why we did that. And I told Steve that the exciting part of this is we weren't done in an hour and a half. We still have the marketing side to talk about, and that'll be taken up at our next meeting. And I do want to comment to publicly, as I said to Emily later, that Steve is not the only one who's commented very favorably on the presentation that was put together. It's beautiful and helped understand. I think everybody on my committee, many of whom are new, understand what we're doing here at the with the golf program. I want to underscore what Steve said, but I want to add to it what I think is a very important point, and that's this. Our job as trustees is not to say, here's how you stripe a tennis court, or I don't like the way that the fence was installed, or I don't like the way that, we shouldn't be spending in the budget $100 on pencils. We should be spending that $100 on pens or things to that effect. That's not our job, or at least I don't see it as our job. Our job is governance. And what I mean by that is that we decide major priorities, and it's up to the staff then to figure out how to carry out. And if they don't, then it's our job to police that activity. So while it's important that we understand the budget, and I would say that just because of our various backgrounds, some of us may have more accounting background than others have, and we understand it maybe more facilely than others do. That the point that Steve raised, I think is important. I think it's important that everybody understands, regardless of their background, regardless of their training, what's making money, what isn't making money, and the like. And that takes work, and it's hard work. And as you held up that book, I mean, that's a lot of pages to read through. It's a lot of pages to have questions about and understand. And it takes a lot of homework to get that job done. And that's, as I say, it's incumbent on all of us to get that job done. And if part of that involves to make it more understandable, the process you've described, Steve, I would be all in on it. Again, with the understanding that we're going to have to commit ourselves to many additional hours than we do today. And again, I'm not opposed to that because I think budgeting is one of the most important, if not the most important thing that ultimately we do. But also in my mind, what it involves is this, and Emily and I have had a number of discussions about this. We allocate tax dollars to different programs, and we allocate X amount of dollars to golf. We allocate X amount to this particular activity. We allocate this amount to that activity. We allocate, as we discussed tonight, this amount to the riverfront, or the riverplex rather. Part of, and that is a policy decision, determining how much of our public's tax dollars we want to provide to support each activity. And I don't think we have enough discussion about that, quite frankly. I don't think we have enough discussion about where our priorities are in a global sense about where we spend our money. And I'd like us to spend more time talking about that issue ultimately, as opposed, where should our priorities be in spending, as opposed to, yeah, I mean, do we have this many campers here, or that many campers there? Again, that's not my job to figure that out. I'm going to commend Joyce here too. She has been a champion for all of us on the issue of environmental sustainability. That is a governance issue. Talking about that and how we accomplish that in the district, again, not talking about how many batteries for this golf cart and the like, but the concept that we will spend money on sustainability issues is a policy issue. So I guess what I would really love to see us do is spend some time this budget season going beyond, Steve, what you talked about, but again, recognize the importance of what you talked about, to really identify what our specific strategic priorities are, whether there are any activities within the district that the time's come to say, we're not going to do this anymore, whether there are other activities that we say, we really have to step this up. Now, I'm going to say something that I want to make clear on the record. I'm not proposing, but I'm just using this as an example of a possibility, where we say, pickleball has taken off so much. We need to create pickleball as a priority, and we need to begin creating pickleball courts, and we're going to find dollars to do it, even if we have to, deal with other programs that are not so popular anymore. Again, I'm making clear, I'm not proposing that. I'm using that as an example. But the point is, that's what budgeting is really about for a board, is identifying areas of strategic importance, identifying areas that are no longer strategically important, and making some very hard decisions that these good people then can carry out. That's where I'd like to see it head. Now, I'm going to make a challenge to our president, because I think this starts, President Johnson, with you. You have to be our leader to do that. And, our discussions in the future, I think, should not be just kind of what we've had in the past, but I think respectfully, you need to work with Emily so we can have those discussions addressing, once again, the educational issues that Steve raised, but then getting the policy issues that really underlie the governance function of this board.
Well, if I can just go a little bit, add, because that's something I meant to talk about, years ago, many years ago, one of the board trustees told me something that, I used ever since, and that was, the budget is it's your roadmap. And if you don't have a roadmap, you don't know where you're going. If you don't have an idea of what any particular budget, activity, program, division, department does, you're always dealing with ambiguity. And so, there's an opportunity, or there's a way to deal with ambiguity.
Steve, again, I underscore exactly what you said. It is a roadmap. And, if you don't update your roadmap every now and then, you got a problem. And fortunately, and I've said this to many of you, we have a brilliant administrator in Emily, executive director in Emily. She does a great job, I think, in trying to point us towards new and innovative ideas and to keep us thinking about how we can move as a governing board, how we can move the Park District forward. So, but again, that governance feature lies ultimately with us. The buck stops here, as they say, and I want to see us have that discussion.
Trustee Harrod?
You. I appreciate also your comments and what you've said, Tim. Coming from a not-for-profit background, and I've mentioned this before, and I think I don't know if it's the way our accounting system is set up, but for me, it's very difficult to know revenue and expenses, deficit, how much tax dollars, when programs are in different sections. The same program is in different sections of the board book. And so you can't, so in a not-for-profit world, you are looking at the program and all of the funding sources and then the expenses, so that golf, I guess golf is easier because, well, no, is it only so Riverplex gets money from more than one place. The zoo. But there's also those tables, you're like going back and forth if you want to compare anything. So if there's some way to make that process easier,
I have a question. So the staff has already started budget preparation now. There's a consensus I'm sensing of we want to see a different or an enhanced or reformatted, whatever that may be. I don't know. But we want something to look different, basically. How can we better help and give you a better picture of what we're looking for right now? And then how can we, plan this a little bit ahead, as we prepare for next budget? What would be helpful from us so you all understand what we're asking?
I'm struggling a little bit. I'm so maybe to back up to Trustee Montez, so I can get a little clarity on a couple components that you had in commentary towards the budget book. I empathize with all of you. I'll start with this. I empathize with all of you. This is a ginormous organization. It is $40 to $50 million in operating budget size, let alone the capital that gets discussed. There's so many different business units. We could spend 3 months talking through every single budget. None of you are paid. I'm guessing you have lives that you wouldn't have the time for that. So we try in what we call the presentation book that is 146 pages in length to provide some roll up of what is otherwise tens of thousands of account numbers. So Trustee Montez, you mentioned there are by each fund pages that outline what we call the departments, which may have multiple programs in them. They may not. There are pages that have just the revenues and the expenses, and you are correct on those pages. It does not net that, but there is the landscape page then that lays out every one of those departments with that net revenue and expense, so you don't have to do that math yourself. Did I misunderstand where?
Each separate department,
It's in there.
So,
but it doesn't have the net.
the financial summary page in each fund does list every department. So general fund has administration, general administration, office maintenance, administration, parks, arborist, Bradley Park. Yes, that land.
Individual departments.
Yes, within that fund, they are.
I know they're listed, but having them separately on each page, one page for each separate department that shows the revenue and expenditure and then the net.
Okay. So if your feedback is you would like a page for every single department, I would look for some additional input from other trustees, because that will increase the size of this document significantly.
Okay, I'll give you input from this trustee, and that's the following. I think there's clearly a sentiment here that we want to do things a little bit differently. I don't know that we can design a process tonight. What I would suggest, and of course, President Johnson has veto power over this, I would suggest that you and Steve and I meet, because I'm chair of the Finance Committee, and the three of us have a discussion about, I'm sorry, of course, I apologize. Yeah, you too, obviously. The four of us have a discussion about how we do this in a way that makes sense for the staff, meets our needs wherever we are at in the accounting understanding, and also tees up, and if President Johnson, well, we'd have to, I guess, schedule a meeting for that, but we could then present to talk at an upcoming meeting also about how we deal with the governance issues that come out of that. Does that make sense, Steve?
Well, also, I don't know, we may have to have this meeting put out that we're meeting together, because I think the rest of the board trustees should also have a say, because they all have concerns about the budget process. So I think we need to figure out what we're going to do as a whole, instead of just 3 or 4 individuals. Because that it appears that everyone has a different view, and we want to make sure we get everybody included, because we don't want you to come up with a plan and then somebody else here doesn't like the plan, and then we're back again.
Well, to do that, we're going to have to call a meeting.
Yes.
And everyone here is going to have to commit themselves. I want to tell you what we're talking about here, in my humble estimation, is a process that's going to take 5 or 6 hours. Now, if I'm fine with committing to that, but if we can find a day that all 7 of us have 5 or 6 hours to devote to this, who will read that budget book in advance and commit to do that and the like, then I'm fine with it. Otherwise, what I'm suggesting again is that some of us come into address the 4A and come up with some concepts that we can bring back and talk about with the board and see if this is really what they want to do.
Well, I definitely want to be in part of that meeting. And I think the rest of the board should have a say also as well. If these documents are not adequate to you and to each of you who doesn't agree or doesn't feel comfortable with it, I think as a whole, it needs to be discussed.
May I offer just a suggestion? That way we don't have to figure out when an additioning meeting schedule could accommodate everyone. Maybe if there is feedback that individual trustees have as it pertains to the budget, whomever we charge to lead this cause in order to present back to the full board, we just submit that feedback to those people, similar to like what we did with like July 3rd, for instance. That may, well, that definitely would check off, Mr. Johnson, I think what you're raising, would it not?
Well, July 3rd is different. There was some confusion there too, but we're talking about the budget right now.
Yeah, no, I'm using it as an example and saying that maybe it may, especially when as it pertains to this budget cycle, maybe it may not be feasible for all of us to get that input and feedback in one setting collectively. I think it may be feasible if we submit our feedback to Emily and Carrie and whomever those designated trustees are, allow them to work through something to present back to us. But it's just an alternative option.
Well, it's up to the board, but I definitely want to be a part of that discussion because I have some concerns.
I just want to say this, what I'm suggesting here, the format exists somewhere in the Park District because it's a similar format to what we used probably in 2015, 16, 17. So the format exists.
My preference would be I think it's easier to have a smaller group of people and to take Alex's idea of if I have something that I can write down that tries to clarify what I just said and get it to Trustee Birchie. I just think it's easier to work with a smaller group of people than 8 or 9 trying to do all that.
I would ask that everyone recognize that time is of the essence. It is August 14th. This budget book really goes to the printer in the beginning of October. So what you're asking for, some of these things are easy. Some of these things I don't truly understand. And so we need to understand more about how this works. My one feedback I would give for you to think about is that the committee structure that you all employ year round to look at how programs work is a place where that didn't exist in the same way when you're talking about those budget presentations that you're referencing from 10, 15 years ago. The work that we're doing on an ongoing basis to talk about how we are operating is very different than it was in the past. If there are structural changes to the book that help you to understand the data in a better way, I'm still not sure that gets you to governance. And so that's what I'd like to figure out is how to help you get the things that you think you aren't receiving in order to govern. But there's a lot of things that are different about this organization. And so I want to recognize that evolution is a part of every good organization, and sometimes things have to change. And certainly we're willing to change now, but it needs to be something that we're talking about pretty quickly because we have set staff on a path, right? The information that they give to us feeds back into this book at every level of the organization. And they are already completing that information for us so that we can stay on track with all of you. So please do keep that in mind as we start to tweak this.
I guess just one other thought I have is that maybe the discussion create a pilot for a portion of the budget, some aspect of the budget, and see if that presentation, the discussion that follows because we do something differently, that we want to continue doing it that way or tweak it a little bit. So rather than taking the whole elephant and trying to eat the whole thing, maybe a piece of it, you know?
Well, we got to find out first of all, what is it that we're really wanting the staff to do in terms of the budget? What problem areas that, if any of you or all of you have concerns about? That's the main piece. My extension.
So, President Johnson, do you want to be a part of that small group? Maybe you and Tim?
Well, most definitely. With this type of agenda, budget is very important to our park district as a whole.
Absolutely.
Yes,
So,
definitely.
Steve, would you be fine if President Johnson and Tim led that effort?
I would like to sit
Steve
in.
has to be a part of it.
Steve has to.
Steve and not chairman of finance. Yes. You're the chairman of finance. It's important that you be there. Thank you. Any other concerns on this issue? Okay, we will.
I just think that, and I know, President Johnson, you understand this, but I think that we just have to be really clear on what's policy making and what's operations as we go into that. Because I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on operations.
I get it. Yes. Any other comments?
So, where are we going from here? Like, what are the next steps? I really don't understand. I'm sorry.
I appreciate that, Alex. Here's what I would suggest is that, I will volunteer to convene a meeting that will consist of Emily, Carrie, Steve, President Johnson, and myself. And that'll have to be noticed, but so be it. And that'll be done in short order. I'll work on this tomorrow. That have to be done in short order for the points that you have raised legitimately, Emily. And Carrie, I can see you're chafing under the same bit. But we'll get that done and we'll get it going. And we'll report back to the board at our next meeting. Fair enough?
Yes.
Oh, by the way, Alex, you raised a point I want to just comment on. For those trustees who have ideas or concepts about this, please feel free to send me an email with just your ideas so we make sure we incorporate that in the process. Okay? Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, moving on. Calendar consent items. Does anyone else have any questions on that item? I have one, well, two. I didn't see anything on the company that's we're buying this from as their what their workforce looked like. There wasn't any information there. They said something about updating their EEO information in the future. What does that entail?
This purchase is the purchase of a mower. So for purchase of completed products where there's not actually labor happening on property, it is not a form that we would ask them to fill out the workforce labor. If they were performing work on property, then you would get that workforce labor.
I see. Okay, great. Is there a motion to approve the calendar?
So moved.
Question? Roll call?
Trustee Birchie?
Abstain.
Trustee Covington?
Aye.
Trustee Harrent?
Aye.
Trustee Hill?
Aye.
Trustee Montez?
Aye.
Vice President Sierra?
Aye.
President Johnson?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, now staying on the, any other pending business? Communications? Other business, I do have a request on other business. I had asked for a updated version of how many minorities we have working for the Park District now, since there's been a tremendous amount of number of individuals, particularly Black individuals, that have been leaving the Park District. And I'm concerned as to the even the young lady that was discussed today. I would like to get another update on the amount of employees that we have, minorities that are working for us now, a more up to date version. I had talked about this before to get a copy brought to the board as a whole. I want to find out what's kind of what's going on and what our numbers are now.
That will be a part of the DEIA packet that is sent out later this week.
Okay.
So can you hear me? So I can better understand, what are you referencing outside of the DEIA report? What is your update? Is there anything else other than what's already in the report?
I
so
know
can understand?
lately there's been like 7 or 8 or 9 individuals, primarily Black individuals.
There's not been 7 or 8.
It hasn't been over the course of
what?
Of the last 12 months or 13 months, 14 months? 8 people.
Months,
well, yeah.
2 years.
That are leaving. I'm just trying to get a handle on what's
So
going
if I
on.
know what I'm not sorry for interrupting. I just want to understand better, because this is helping me be clear, because that DEI report on this coming Tuesday won't go back 14 months. You see what I'm saying? It doesn't go back. So if you tell me what time period, that would help me. I can gather the numbers you're looking for, because currently the DEI report will reflect 3 months and 6 months.
All right. I'm concerned about the exodus of several employees, a lot of employees. Not they didn't get fired, some of them just voluntarily want to leave. But I'm also hearing that there's a culture that they're concerned about, that their needs are not being met here, and it's making them want to go to other places to work. And I'm just trying to find out why that is happening, why this strong exodus, primarily of Black individuals.
I disagree. It's a strong exodus, but I will tell you, whenever a person has tendered their resignation, they are sent a survey to talk about why they're leaving. They get a whole survey. They get the opportunity to meet, not with me, but someone else in my department, to go over their exit survey. And it has a lots of things in that survey that I could show you what it says. It talks about why you're leaving, salaries and benefits, is it your supervision. It has a whole list of things. Now, we can't force people to do it. Some people do the survey, the exit interviews, what we call, and they just send it in, or they choose to come in and go over the exit interview and give all those details. I take that exit interview and I share that with the immediate supervisor. So if there are things we can tweak, I didn't like the dental program for, dental insurance. I wish we did braces for adults, which we don't. So then we take that information and say, what can we do better? So we do those things. And I can share that with you, sir, if you would like to see what that looks like.
Well, the other concern that I have also is that individuals don't have the same opportunities to move up into new positions or management positions if they haven't had that position before. But yet I've seen other employees here, even sitting around this horseshoe, that moved up in different positions, had the opportunity to do that. And these individuals have not, or they've been given some type of excuse as they might not be suitable.
I would love to engage you more in what do you mean by opportunity, because as policy, as you know, we have to post jobs outside and inside the park district. And then we have qualifications that the people apply. I can name you several individuals who have expressed desires to move up and do different things in the park district, and they have done such. We have talked about an intern who's now started as an intern part-time and is now IT, is a Black female. We have Graylin Guyton, who started off in purchasing, and he expressed in forestry. So we directed him to take classes, and we interviewed and gave him books, sent him to a chainsaw class, which is not a part of his job at that time.
Yes,
And he ended up in those jobs. So there are opportunities, there are things that we do work on. So I'm interested in further dialogue with you so I can better understand.
Yes, we will have further dialogue. I'm going to take too much of your time now, but I have some strong concerns in this area. I really do. But
I look forward to
we
it.
won't go into further detail about it. I did talk with your supervisor as well. But yes, we definitely will have some more conversation about this situation that I'm seeing a strong exodus of Blacks leaving the park district. I have a concern about that. Thank you.
One thing came up tonight, occurred to me, and this is to our attorney, our Kevin. We do ask people when they come up to speak their name and their address, but I thought the rule was that they don't have to do that.
You're correct. We request that information. If they would decline, we would still allow public comment, is my understanding.
I sometimes, and I appreciate that, and I sometimes wondered whether they know that. I mean, it may be that they have no idea. Do we tell them that?
There's a policy in place that lays that out. It's also.
But they're not looking at our policies before they step up to speak, you know.
Tim, are you saying the name, they don't have to give their name? Because I know they don't have to give their address.
Yeah, apparently they don't have to give their name or their address.
Well, no, but I mean, by
Oh, they
legally,
sign up on
don't-
this before and it says it right on the
Signage,
document?
And there's no requirement for the address on it's just a name.
Okay, but they are required to give their name?
I don't believe there's
Yeah.
any legal requirement for that, but I think it helps with meeting minutes and follow-up conversations and things of that nature. If someone declined. think
I
we'd
don't
have
know.
that
I mean,
conversation.
and I appreciate what you're saying. I just think that, I mean, if they have a legal right to do neither, they ought to know that.
I would feel uncomfortable. I mean, if I saw other people having to give their name and address and coming to speak, I wouldn't do it because I don't want to go on to YouTube and tell everybody where I live. I don't think that's fair to expect anybody else to. I don't think any one of us would want to step up when we're live on YouTube and give our name and where we live, address out. I think that's just not safe.
Well, that's a good point. Good point. Yes. If that's, yes, or our address is posted. Yeah.
They are
and
not
phone numbers.
posted any longer.
They're not? They're not on the website anymore? Or on a phone number?
I had several people complain to me and say, I can't believe you've let them put your address on there. I think we have a lot of controversial issues. And
I thought that when we first got elected that we had to do that as public officials.
now
Elected.
city council doesn't do it for sure. And
It's on the forms we fill out to run.
Yeah, well, I didn't want to stir up.
Well, if that's, we've been doing it for 30 years or so. If that's not the policy, then we shouldn't do it. If that, people feel that way.
I think that's
it's
a state
changed.
policy or a IAPD policy that we don't ask for their
Names
names. No,
or
their addresses. I don't know about names. I
addresses,
just knew
okay.
about addresses.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that's so noted. All right.
President Johnson, I do have one thing. I'll make it
Yes,
quick.
go ahead.
Shalise, Emily, and Brianna, can you put on your radar the EEO and affirmative action report that was presented at the city last night? Long story short, and I think this will go to help some of the information that President Johnson is requesting as well. The city did an EEO report. It pretty much expands the workforce report that we're doing. So I'd like to see how we can look at that, evaluate where we could potentially enhance the report that we have at the committee level.
I have a question.
Yes.
When you say EEO, are you talking about the EEO-1 report that they have to do nationally, the DOL, or something else they're calling the EEO?
I'm not going to say yay or nay because I don't know.
Okay.
So
I should
I'll,
look to see what they have.
yeah, so I'll make sure that Emily has the report that I'm referring to, and then maybe we can just sit and chew on it. For the sake of time, we will not go into it tonight, but I know it does have some things as it relates to termination, promotion, et cetera, and so forth. So cool. Thank you. All right. Thanks, President Johnson.
Thank you. All righty, moving on, action steps reviews.
We're going to set up a meeting. There's several, but
Several,
the top
okay.
one will be to set up a meeting about the budget.
Yes, there is.
No.
All in favor? Yes, Board Secretary?
We need a second and a vote. Okay.